First story is the city behind the wall. Imagine a single city block, roughly the size of a few soccer fields, but packed tightly with over 50,000 people. This was the Kowloon-walled city, a dystopian monolith that once stood as an anomaly in the heart of Hong Kong. It wasn't designed by architects, but grew organically, like a concrete fungus, layer upon layer without a single safety regulation. It began as a diplomatic glitch, a tiny Chinese military fort left behind and forgotten when Britain leased Hong Kong in 1898. Neither government wanted responsibility, so it became a lawless enclave where refugees and outlaws flocked for sanctuary. By the 1980s, the buildings had fused into a single massive structure, blocking out the sun completely from the lower levels. Down in these alleyways, it was eternal night, illuminated only by flickering fluorescent tubes and buzzing neon signs. Residents carried umbrellas even on sunny days because overhead pipes constantly leaked water and waste onto the streets below. It was a hive of unregulated industry where fishball factories operated next door to illegal casinos and opium dens. The city was famous for its unlicensed dentists, who set up dirty clinics with no sanitation but incredibly cheap prices. Triad gangs ruled the shadows, acting as the de facto police force and government in a place where the law couldn't reach. Yet, amidst the filth and crime, a tight-knit community flourished, with families living normal lives in tiny, windowless apartments. The only escape was the rooftop, a chaotic playground of TV antennas where children played and residents breathed fresh air. Planes landing at the nearby Kai Tak airport flew so low you could almost reach up and touch their landing gear. But this anarchic marvel couldn't last forever. In 1993, the governments finally agreed to tear it down. It took a full year to demolish the structure, revealing the incredible density of the lives packed inside like a cross-section. Today, a serene traditional park sits in its place, with only a few stone foundations left to whisper the story of the past. But its spirit lives on as the visual blueprint for every cyberpunk city in modern sci-fi and video games. The Kowloon-walled city remains a testament to human adaptability, proving we can survive and even thrive anywhere. Second story, the Invisible Executioner. In the 1840s, the General Hospital in Vienna was one of the finest medical institutions in the world. But inside its maternity ward, an invisible executioner was stalking the hallways, claiming the lives of thousands of new mothers. The disease was called puerperal fever, or childbed fever, and it was a death sentence that struck terrifyingly fast. Strangely, the hospital was divided into two clinics, one run by doctors and medical students, and the other by midwives. In the doctor's clinic, the death rate was horrific, sometimes reaching nearly 30%, while the midwives' clinic was safe. Pregnant women knew this terrified truth, often begging on their knees not to be admitted to the doctor's ward. Enter Ignaz Semmelweis, a young Hungarian doctor who was tormented by the screams of the dying women. He obsessed over the difference. Was it the air, the diet, or even the terrifying sound of the priest's spell passing by? The breakthrough came in a tragic disguise when his colleague Jakub Kolechka died after being accidentally cut during an autopsy. Semmelweis realized his friend's symptoms were identical to the women dying of childbed fever. The doctors were starting their day by dissecting corpses in the morgue, then walking directly upstairs to deliver babies. They were carrying what Semmelweis called cadaverous particles on their unwashed hands. They were the invisible executioners. He immediately ordered all staff to wash their hands in a harsh chlorine solution before touching any patients. The results were miraculous. The death rate in the doctor's clinic plummeted from 18% to less than 1%. But instead of being hailed as a hero, Semmelweis was mocked, attacked, and eventually fired. The medical establishment was insulted by the idea that gentlemen's hands could be dirty, refusing to believe they were the cause of death. Broken by the rejection and the guilt of his past unintentional killings, Semmelweis slowly lost his mind. He was lured into an asylum, beaten by guards, and tragically died from an infection in a wound, the very same sepsis he spent his life fighting. It wasn't until years later, with the work of Louis Pasteur and Joseph Lister, that the world realized Semmelweis was right. Today, he is known as the savior of mothers, a man who washed his hands of the dirt but could never wash his soul of the tragedy. His story remains a chilling reminder that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the room is simply what we refuse to see. Third story, the loudest sound in history. Imagine a sound so incredibly violent that it didn't just break silence, it physically broke the people who heard it. This wasn't a nuclear bomb or a meteor strike, it was the earth itself screaming. On the morning of August 27, 1883, the volcanic island of Krakatoa in Indonesia decided to tear itself apart. At exactly 10:02 a.m., the final eruption unleashed a force equivalent to 200 megatons of TNT. This event produced the loudest sound in recorded history, estimated at a deafening 310 decibels. To put that in perspective, a Saturn V rocket launch is about 180 decibels, and that can melt concrete. 40 miles away, the captain of the British ship Norham Castle wrote that the explosion felt like a solid blow to the head. More than half of his crew suffered ruptured eardrums instantly, deafened by a sound that had traveled 40 miles over open water. But the sound didn't stop there. It roared across the ocean, reaching Perth, Australia, nearly 2,000 miles away. It was heard on the island of Rodrigues, near Africa, 3,000 miles away, sounding like heavy, distant cannon fire. That is the equivalent of standing in New York City and clearly hearing a noise coming from Dublin, Ireland. The shockwave was so powerful it didn't just travel once, it circled the entire globe, not one, not two, but 4 times. Barometers in cities all over the world went haywire, spiking every 34 hours as the pressure wave passed them again. Even after the sound dropped below human hearing, the infrasound kept moving, pulsing against the atmosphere for days. The explosion ejected so much ash into the stratosphere that it changed the color of the sky worldwide for years. Some art historians believe the blood-red sky in Edvard Munch's famous painting, The Scream, was inspired by these volcanic sunsets. The eruption eventually collapsed the island into the sea, triggering a tsunami that claimed over 36,000 lives. We have detonated nuclear weapons since, but in terms of raw acoustic power, nothing has ever beaten Krakatoa. It remains a terrifying reminder that the loudest shout ever heard on this planet came from the planet itself.